Welcome to Roger's That Podcast. Your hosts for today's podcast are Jake, me, Lily, and today we have a great opportunity to interview Mr. Ryan, who is the chief meteorologist of the NBC Connecticut Storm Tracker team.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You're welcome. Welcome, Ryan. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. We aim to help our viewers learn more about potential jobs and careers in our community. We really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thank you. This is great.
Okay, this is part one, background and professional questions.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where are you from?
So I grew up in Guilford, Connecticut, so not too far from you guys. And since I was a little kid, I was always really interested in the weather. So I went to school to study meteorology, and then I went to grad school also to study meteorology. I went to Penn State, and then to SUNY Albany. And I've been working at NBC Connecticut as a meteorologist since 2005. So I've been there for almost 20 years.
That's cool.
It's a long time.
Where did you go to college and what did you study?
Yeah, so I started in Penn State, and it was meteorology. So I took a lot of courses about a lot of math, a lot of science, figuring out how the atmosphere works, why the wind blows, why storms form, why clouds form. And then after I graduated, I went to grad school and studied the same thing, just a little more intense. But it was great. I loved being able to learn about something that I thought was really cool.
Can you describe your job as a meteorologist?
Yes, I can. It really depends on the day. So most of the time when the weather's quiet, I get to work at about 2:30 in the afternoon. And the beginning of my day is spent preparing a forecast or trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future. And after I do that, I make graphics. So I make different maps and graphs to show people what the weather is. And then between 4 and 6:30 p.m., I present it on TV. So I'm in a studio with lots of bright lights and a camera, and I'm at a green screen, and that's what I do. So it's when the weather's quiet, it can be a little boring because you have to come up with a bunch of different ways to say that it's going to be partly cloudy. But when the weather is interesting or when there's a storm coming, it can be really exciting. It can be stressful, but it can be fun. And it's great to be able to help people with their day-to-day lives.
How long have you been a meteorologist?
So when I graduated school, that was about 20 years ago. So about 20 years now. So it doesn't seem like it's been 20 years, but it has been.
What was your inspiration for deciding on a career as a weatherman?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I think my inspiration was that I was always really excited about the weather. So I was always really passionate about it. So if there was a storm, I would get really excited. I'd watch the Weather Channel or I'd watch local TV stations and try to figure out what was going to happen. So when I was really interested in the weather, when I was younger than you guys, so in the late 80s and early 90s, there was no internet back then. Certainly not something you could really use at home. So if you wanted to know what was going to happen, you had to watch TV. Or listen to the radio. There was really no other way. So things have changed a lot, which has been sort of fun to watch over the course of my lifetime, being interested in weather and the course of my career.
What do you enjoy about your job?
Ooh, what do I enjoy about it? I'd say the number one thing is I love to be able to do something for work that I love. So, I'm getting paid to do something that's like a hobby of mine, and not a lot of people can say that. So that's really cool. The other thing too is that just being able to help people out, to let them know when storms are coming or when to expect rain or help them make plans. That's nice. And people, frequently give us a lot of nice feedback that, they enjoy watching and we help them out. And that's great. That's very gratifying.
What is it like to win an Emmy for your work?
Oh, yeah. It's really cool. It was very nice. I entered a few years back, and I got the award. So you go up on stage and you give a little speech and you get the statue.
That's
It's in the other room. I don't have it with me, but it was cool. It was a lot of fun.
What are your biggest challenges of your job? What do you least enjoy about your work?
Ooh, a drought when it's really boring. Uh, I think the hardest thing. I mean, a lot of people would say the hardest part of their job, or you would think that the hardest part about being a meteorologist is um, when there's a big storm, when there's a hurricane or a tornado or a blizzard. But those are the days where we're. That's why we do what we do. Like we're if you don't find that kind of stuff fascinating and you don't really want to work your tail off those days, you should probably find a different career. So I think one of the hardest things would be when the weather is really quiet. You have to find a way to make it interesting to people. And that can be hard to do when you've got, a few weeks where the weather is pretty quiet and it's the same every single day. How do you make it interesting? Because at the end of the day, we're making TV. We're trying to find things that are interesting or noteworthy, things that would make people watch. And so you do that not by scaring people or hyping things up, because that doesn't work. You do it by trying to make the weather interesting and explaining how things work or why things are happening. And that can be very rewarding, but it can also be challenging. So I'd say that's the hardest part of my job is how do you make a really boring weather pattern interesting on TV?
What does your work schedule look like?
That's a good question. So I get in around 2 or 2:30, and I work until 11:30 at night. So I'm up pretty late. So I do the newscast until 6:30, and then I get a break. So I'll go home for dinner sometimes, and then I get back to work around 8 o'clock. Then I get work done. I'll work on the forecast. I'll make videos for social media. I'll do stuff on our website or a blog, and then I do the last newscast at 11 p.m. So it's late. I get home at like almost midnight. So it's a weird schedule, but I'm sort of used to it by now.
How do you get your information about upcoming storms?
So that's a great question. So a lot of different places. So we use all kinds of different instruments and different pieces of technology to make our forecast. So we have radars and satellites. We have weather balloons that we look at. We have different computer models. We have dozens of computer models, and basically those computer models take all that data from satellites and radars and weather balloons, and they put it all into these really, really powerful computers, and they make these calculations, and they come up with forecasts. And so we use those as a guide to try to make our forecast. And so it's knowing when to use which model, and when to sort of use your experience to have an idea of, okay, what is more likely to happen in this situation. So that's sort of how we do it. We work with our colleagues at the National Weather Service. They help us out too sometimes with the forecast. We're all sort of working on the same team to prepare people for what's coming.
We just finished a weather unit in our science class, and we
Okay.
learned about weather balloons.
Yeah. What do you like it?
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool, right?
But I wish somebody actually got to ride in the balloons.
I mean, those balloons go up pretty high. I don't know if you want to do that.
It's cool though. Like a hot air balloon.
Yeah.
How did you learn how to read weather maps?
Oh, well, a lot of it I learned by myself when I was younger, just from looking at things on the internet and reading books. And then I also in school in college, you learn a lot about weather maps, from how to make them by hand to knowing what goes in them to using them to come up with a prediction or a forecast.
Why is weather sometimes so unpredictable?
That's a good question. So here's one example for you. So yesterday at work, when I was working on the forecast, we were trying to figure out what was going to happen on Sunday and Monday. And one of our main computer models had heavy rain on Sunday and Monday and a storm that just sort of stalled out nearby. So that was one scenario. Another one of our computer models that we use all the time had sunny skies and temperatures like in this mid 60s. So they were completely different. And so sometimes the atmosphere is just sort of unpredictable. So sometimes we get these different kinds of um, solutions in our computer models. And so we have to figure out, okay, one, which one is most likely, which is easier said than done. That's hard to do. But the more important part, I think, is to give people, let people know that the forecast is uncertain or that it may change. So, I'm really confident about what the weather's going to be tomorrow and Saturday. We have a really good idea. But Sunday and Monday, I'm not really that sure. So if you're honest with people and you tell them that, that's helpful. That's where human beings, we can still add value. Otherwise, you can just get, you get a little icon on your phone and that's enough, but it doesn't really explain the situation to you. So that's what we try to do to help people out.
I'm very glad you're good at your job because I have soccer games during the weekend and I would not like to go out there when it's raining.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, it may rain on Sunday. So
good thing my game's on Saturday.
now there you go. You should be good.
How mad do people get when your weather report is not perfect?
Not that mad. I mean, there are some people who are just sort of mean and just like to write things on Facebook or on social media. But you can't. I mean, those people tend to be just sort of miserable, and you can't let it get to you. You got to just do your job the best you can, and as long as you've done all you can do, that's the most important part. So you get used to some of the haters, and you just sort of laugh it off and move on to the next storm.
What's the worst weather that you've ever experienced?
It's a good question. I've been in a couple pretty bad thunderstorms. I was in a hurricane in North Carolina called Hurricane Florence. And the wind was over 100 miles an hour during that. That was pretty crazy. I did a story on the top of Mount Washington back in maybe 2013 or 2014. And what was that?
We were born in 2013.
Okay, yeah. So right around the time you were born, I did a story for the news at the top of Mount Washington, which is the highest point in New England, and the wind was over 100 miles an hour, and the temperature was around 0. So the wind chill was like 30 or 40 below. So that was probably the worst, but that was fun because you get to you go outside and the wind's blowing you over, and it's just a cool place.
Probably the worst weather I've been in is either a tornado, like when we were really little, or something that happened to me during the summer. It was like really bad thunderstorm, and like the sky was turning different colors because of the lightning.
Yeah, you guys had the tornado and the storms in 2018, which were really bad. So
that's just one I remember.
Yeah, that was a bad one.
Just your worst one. What did you want to be when you were in middle school?
Meteorologist. So same thing, didn't change.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Not a lot of people get to say that, so I'm really lucky like that.
Okay, we're moving on to this or that questions.
Okay.
Snowstorms or thunderstorms?
Snowstorms.
A week of rain or a heat wave?
Heat wave.
Humid air or freezing cold?
Freezing cold. I like to ski.
Thunder or lightning?
Lightning.
I agree with that one.
Yeah, it's cool to watch, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Summer forecast or winter forecast?
Winter forecasts are harder a lot of the time, but summer can be unpredictable with thunderstorms and, occasionally you get a tornado. So that's a tie, I'd say.
Finally, what advice would you give to a middle school student that is interested in becoming a meteorologist when they grow up?
That's a great question. I'd say the number one thing, if you want to be a meteorologist, make sure you work as hard as you can in math because most sciences are completely based in math. And so a lot of people who go to school for meteorology, they struggle with the math. And so the things you're learning in 6th grade in math, you'll build on in 7th grade and 8th grade and then in high school. So having a really good foundation is really important. So math is one thing. Another thing I'd say is, research and learn as much about it online as you can. And it was, I think that's probably one of the coolest things you can do now with so much stuff on the internet. It's a really easy way to learn about a career ahead of time. Meet people in the field, reach out to people that you're interested, who are in the field of meteorology, whether they're TV meteorologists or storm chasers, and get to know them a little bit. And I think those are the big things. And if you're really passionate about something, just keep working hard, and then eventually you'll be able to do it.
How can our viewers find your weather reports or follow you on social media?
That's a good one. So I'm on NBC Connecticut at 4, 5, 6, and 11 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then I'm on Facebook and Instagram. So you just search for me. Yeah, I'll come up. I think I'm Weather Hanrahan. So weather and then my last name.
That concludes our discussion with meteorologist Ryan Hanrahan. We appreciate you spending time with us today. Tell us a little about yourself and your profession.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. It was great to meet you.
Thank you for tuning in to another great episode of Rogers That. See you next time. Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome. All right. Enjoy your weekend, okay?
You too.
Bye.
Bye.